Like the one particular Earth fascism thing that always stuck out to me among the 14 points was the point that was popular elitism. I want to say I always love that term because like it's a beautiful contradiction. You know, it's like jumbo shrimp. Well,
Yeah.
no, yeah, because like I should specify that like Echo, he's clearly using the old definition of popular. So like the modern definition is like when something is well liked, you know, or like a popularity contest sort of thing. But the old definition just means kind of commoner. Like, you know, in ancient Rome, there were the optimates and the populates, you know, with the optimates being the senators who got support from the elites, the optimal people of society, and then the populates who
The
got their
plebes,
power
my
from
friend. The plebes.
Yep, pretty much. So yeah, basically, like if we went back in time to like I don't know 1200 England, and we asked just a commoner like, "Hey, is the king better than you?" They'd probably be like, "Well, yeah, you know, God makes some people better than others. That's just how it is." And in this case, you know, it's kind of regular elitism. It's I'm better than you because you know I was born into a royal bloodline, or regular elitism is like I'm better than you because you know I'm richer than you. That's regular elitism. Like when Leona Helmsley of New York City allegedly said, you know, we don't pay taxes, only the little people pay taxes. That's kind of regular elitism. But popular elitism, it's basically when you say, I'm more normal than you, therefore I'm better than you. Now, what counts as normal, you're not really supposed to think about it, you're just supposed to fucking get it. And that's another thing that drives me up a wall. Is like, you're not supposed to think about it, you're supposed to get it like that. And I mean, I understand some things are intuitive, but when you treat everything as intuitive, it just gets annoying. Like
The status quo is just sort of what people they expect everybody to look at and say this is what's normal. I mean, the same thing goes for how you would, let's take it back to even high school. The same way, you know, the way that you would dress, you could be considered not normal just because you didn't look like everybody else or think like everybody else. And they establish what that status quo is, and boy, do they sure like to protect what that status quo is.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying, but like this is a bit even more annoying. Like in fact, you probably remember that scene from All in the Family that I sent to you. Basically, you know, Archie says that he smoked a cigar in an elevator to the chagrin of the lady in there. She then reported his. She asked him to stop. He didn't. She reported him to the building manager at the bottom floor. Mike pointed. The manager said that I'm going to have to write you up and you're going to get fined, like I think $50 for it. And Mike points out like, oh yeah, there's a law against smoking in elevators because this was the 70s. And I guess that was the first anti-smoking law at the time. But then Archie says that when the lady left, he bribed the building manager with a spare cigar and the guy ripped up the citation. And Gloria remarked like, well, geez, Dad, and all your talk about law and order, to which Archie said, law and order is only for the criminals. And that line, like, it lives rent-free in my head because, I mean, technically speaking, Archie was the criminal. He broke the law.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's basically saying, I'm normal. You know, smoking cigars is normal. Therefore, I, as Mr. Normal, have the, you know, absolute authority to decide what is and is not a law. And it's like, and it's one of those things that's like, I can understand that as someone's philosophy in the sense of like, I'm not going to obey a law that is immoral. But at the same time, it's a bit, it's rather hypocritical from Archie to be like, we need to have law and order, but I get to decide what law and order is.
It's the rules for thee,
Like,
but not for me rule. I mean, how many times have we
Yeah.
seen it?
Oh yeah. In fact, there's even one part that happened just a little bit later in that episode that I didn't include it because it would have taken too long. But it was basically, you know, Archie said something like, you know, like we're allowed to smoke anything that God put on this earth. And Mike asked, are we allowed to smoke marijuana then? And Archie said, oh, God didn't put that there. That was put there by Mexican gangsters. And I'm not going to lie, that was actually kind of funny of just how absurd it was. But at the same time, it's him saying that, you know, I have God on my side. You don't even think about what this even means.
And even though this is an actual fact that marijuana does come from nature, still this doesn't support my narrative, so therefore have a straw man.
Yeah, that sense of popular elitism really drives me up a wall because it's like in my head, I'm basically saying like you should know better. It's like I'd expect, you know, some, you know, rich jerk like Leona Helmsley to be like, we don't pay taxes, only the little people pay taxes. But it's like, you should know better. Like, I thought you would not want this for anybody. Maybe it's like a cycle of abuse kind of thing, like when somebody was abused as a kid, they grow up and they abuse their own kids, and kind of sad.
Well,
maybe it's like that. I don't know.
A lot of it has to do with just breaking that cognitive dissonance of being like, I'm a bad person. Wait a minute, hold on. Instead, I can find something else to blame this on. Instead of being
No, yeah, you don't even have to be a bad person. It could just be, I'm a good person who did a bad thing, because it's like, I just don't like that all or nothing attitude. I mean, I get some things are all or nothing, but it's like, you can mess up. I mess up all the time.
The ability to say that I was wrong, I didn't know that, hey, you're right about that. I think that's obviously one of the more prominent features of, I would say, liberal discord. But if you're not going to say that you were ever wrong about anything, you're not going to learn anything new. And I suppose the idea of anything new completely goes against the idea of conservatism. So it's a vicious cycle, really.
No, yeah, and ironically, I've read through some classical conservative philosophers, and they do make some valid points. Like one general gist is that, society is complicated, and if you rock the boat too much, you may end up causing more damage than you prevent. So I was like, you know what, I can at least understand the ideals of that. The idea that, society, there's no way that we as humans can know everything. So you got to be careful when changing things. It's like, okay, I get that ideal. But at the same time, you don't hear much about that kind of classical conservative ideal.
Well, not really anymore. Now, the idea of conservative is, I guess it just means whatever Donald Trump says, because if you don't agree with that, you're just kind of called a rhino. So,
even before that, it was commie or terrorist or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting to find the leader of Antifa. Still waiting.
Honestly, Antifa confuses me because, they don't seem to have much of an organizational structure. They just kind of exist. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm saying I just don't get it. How do they function?
Honestly, I don't think it's really because it's an organization. It's just a mentality. We're anti-fascist people. I guess the people that decide to dress in the black bloc and go to the protests and physically fight Proud Boys, I guess that would be considered the most organized form of Antifa. But as far as I'm concerned, anti-fascism is a mentality. And as Americans, I always thought that was kind of the thing. Isn't that what... we were trying to stamp out during the whole fighting the Axis situation?
It got to that point eventually, yes.
But, it always makes me wonder, though, how many of those people that were part of that America First movement that was actually very pro-Hitler had to go and fight Hitler and was like, hey, maybe I should be on this side. And it makes me wonder if that was the reason why Warner Brothers had to put out so many different kinds of propaganda cartoons.
Well, no, yeah, and of course, who could forget the classic Der Führer's face?
Well, it was a Donald Duck cartoon. I remember as a kid.
Yeah, that was a Disney one. Yeah,
that
it was
I think it was called the Spirit of America or the Spirit of 39. I forget exactly the year, but it was a Donald Duck cartoon, and it was about how taxes defeat the Axis. It was definitely World War II propaganda, but I just remember seeing that and wondering as I grew older and saw people sort of really embrace the right-wing side of things, because in the family I grew up with, let's just say that Charles Coughlin's influence had, gotten to their minds in a fairly populated way.
Are you from the Detroit area?
No. I'm from Mansfield, Ohio.
Oh, neat. No, yeah, I'm all too familiar with Charles Coughlin. I'll give Coughlin credit for one thing and one thing only. It was basically eventually the Vatican told him to shut the F up, and he was like, fine. And it was one of those things that I always found kind of impressive insofar as, because it's easy to forget he lived up until the 70s. But when the Vatican told him to stop, he just stopped. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll give him credit for at least taking his job as a priest seriously.
Well, he died rich.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how exactly that works because, at least when you're a priest, you get a salary, and I don't know exactly. Yeah,
he's taking all that under the table money.
No, yeah, I guess, yeah. I'm just thinking, like, I don't know if he had to donate it or something, but yeah.
No. He was taking under the table money from, people like the America First Committee, or just paying them to basically read speeches that were written by Goebbels.
Oh, yeah, old Joey G.
Joey G. Oh, Lord.
Oh, yeah, you ever see The Producers?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I always, love that line in The Producers. But it's like, Goebbels, where's my Joey G? And I just love that line, just Joey G.
Wonderful.
Speaking of Goebbels, there's that website from that, I think his name was Professor Bytework. He's a professor emeritus from Calvin University, and he's, translated and commented on a bunch of old school Nazi and East German propaganda. And he has hundreds of speeches by Goebbels in particular. I guess Goebbels is the easiest to find.
Well, everything was archived. He kept very, 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 very detailed journals.
No, that's true. And I guarantee you his diaries were probably a historian's, dream come true.
Or nightmare, one of the two.
Well, now if you're a historian, it's probably a dream because now you have actual documented evidence.
Yeah. Not everything that they decided not to burn.
Well, yeah. Especially, I remember there was actually, when I was in the server originally, in fact, I'm pretty sure that the reason the initial server got axed by Discord was because we ended up attracting some Holocaust deniers.
Oh, good. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Although I'm not going to lie, it was pretty fun to roast them.
Oh, I bet.
At least yeah. And one of Goebbels' diary entries, one of the last ones is, I'm paraphrasing a bit from memory, but he said something anybody in power should stamp out these Jews, and God willing, we're doing a pretty good job. We've almost finished the job ourselves. And it's one of those things that's well, if the Holocaust didn't happen, why would Goebbels literally say we've almost finished the job ourselves? And
yeah,
they claimed that it was a translation and they cited some sort of Holocaust denial think tank, which argued that Goebbels actually meant to say he was referring to stamping out Jewish influence. But the thing is that at least the translation in particular, it specifically said kill these Jews like rats.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking
I mean, there was even the propaganda. Go ahead.
So yeah, German better than I do.
Anything that's plural is usually going to be D because that's going to pluralize it. So everything that's singular is singular, and everything that's plural is plural, unless you're referring to a singular object. And if a male object is plural, it's definitely going to be D. Because words have genders in German. It's a hoot.
Yeah.
As far as Goebbels trying to gaslight with that one, that's when you say, the movie The Eternal Jew, literally the opening is...
no, he wasn't. I know that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but no, Goebbels wasn't gaslighting with that one. That was literally his private diary. He was being honest, saying we've almost killed them all ourselves,
Nah, I mean, as far as the people in your chat trying to gaslight, saying with the Goebbels quote, it's here's his journal, here's the screen representation as well. It's I don't know. It seems like gaslighting is just the playbook. For example, it was Antifa that stormed the Capitol, dude. It was Antifa.
That's another thing I want to add, that all or nothing mindset, because I do have some conservative friends, and due to the all or nothing mindset they seem to have, or at least a lot of them that I've talked to, they seem to have a hard time accepting that anyone who was quote unquote on their side could do something bad. I'm about to say actually, I should add, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? I just want to.
I'm 41.
This will make sense soon.
I'm 41.
Okay. So I'm sure you remember the OKC, right?
Oklahoma City?
Oklahoma City bombing?
Yeah.
So no, I remember I was talking to one of my friends, and one of my conservative friends, and I remarked about how the far right in America has a much higher body count than the far left. But I said, although I will agree that Timothy McVeigh probably skews the stats. And this guy legitimately tried to argue with me that Timothy McVeigh was not right wing.
Okay, well, there's this level of cognitive dissonance that's so hard to overcome.
So yeah, and it's like you can accept that Timothy McVeigh was right wing, and that it doesn't reflect on other right wingers. It's like, yeah, like the thing about McVeigh was he was not happy with how the federal government was acting. And I'll be honest, a lot of people in America are not happy. But the difference is that the vast majority of people who are unhappy do not, deliberately blow up a building with the explicit intent of killing as many people as possible.
Correct.
It's like, yeah, it's like, do you take everything so effing personally, dude? It's like, oh, good Lord.
I don't know. It always seems that the victim mentality of something stopping them from having something always has to be prevalent in order to, be able to have that mindset.
So I've spent a lot of time trying to understand American conservative rhetoric. Excuse me. And after spending a long time trying to boil it down into one sentence, I think I actually managed to do it. And a left-wing establishment is always in charge. They victimize us, so-called normal people, and exclude us from any meaningful power.
I mean, if that's not just dead on, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I always remember one of my, you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
I never got into it.
Truth be told, I haven't either, but I do know one thing about it that people will kind of make fun of and I want to apologize to any Dragon Ball Z fans in the audience. I'm definitely going to get some details mixed up. But I think the guy who wrote the comic or manga, I think it was Toriyama, he had an editor who would kind of push him to make better villains, that sort of thing. So he might I think there was one story arc where there was a guy who made android robots, but the editor didn't like certain robots as they were introduced. So he kind of had to just come up with a reason to be oh, that's actually the next robot who comes in. So it's oh, yeah, you defeated Android 4, but the real challenge was Android 5. Oh, you defeated Android 5. He was just a prototype. It's number 6.
Season 6 is supernatural.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but it's basically that. In this case, it's for literally decades and decades, the conservatives in America have been saying, the state has all the power. The state is run by liberals. And then in 2016, or technically 2017, when Trump's term started, the conservatives had the following. They had the House, they had the Senate, the presidency, the Supreme Court. They had control of almost enough state legislatures to unilaterally amend the Constitution. And what did they do? They said, okay, we may have conquered the state, but the real enemy, deep state. It was deep state all along.
There's always a bigger fish.
Yep.
So you're going to be starting a new career fairly soon, yeah?
Fingers crossed I can pass the tests.
I don't think that you're going to have a problem with it.
Yep. Maybe one thing I'll do is then I'll just wait for some conservative to call me a groomer on Twitter.
Oh, it won't take too long. Just trust me.
No, yeah, I always remember one of my favorite things from the whole Lives of TikTok thing is she shared a TikTok where a teacher is she's literally laughing and she's telling a story about how one of her students asked if they should pledge allegiance to the gay pride flag in the room or something like that. And she thought it was funny. And she was just telling that story how she thought it was funny. But these people online were just furious, saying she is forcing kids to pledge allegiance to the gay flag. And I'm just what? Did you even watch the thing? And I'm she's laughing. She cannot hold a straight face. She clearly thought the story was funny. Good Lord, your skin is thinner than a stripper's panties, man. Not you personally, but people got mad at that.
I mean, mine can't be. It just depends on the day. It's ideal. Without nuance, we have hyperbole.
And don't get me wrong, hyperbole is fun, but you can't do everything on hyperbole.
Yeah. I mean, hyperbole, I don't know, you should only take 1, maybe 2 times to get seated as House Speaker instead of 15.
You can have a little hyperbole as a treat. No, yeah, basically if you ever have the time to listen to some of the stuff that I read, you'll find that some of it can be pretty amusing, how some things never change and other things seem to change a lot. Although a lot of things are in the never change category. One thing that legitimately caught me off guard was in the late 70s, there was a big push by the American right to not give the Panama Canal back to Panama. I legitimately never expected that. I should say, in hindsight, I should have expected it, but it's just something I never thought about. Because I'm 26. I was born in 96.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically by the time I even understood anything about the world around me, the Panama Canal was already back in Panama's hands. So like it was just one of those things I never really thought about. But yeah, just like the odd attachment that a lot of conservatives had to it.
Obviously connected to very essential trade routes, and money is
It's not just the money, it's also the pride aspect, because apparently this was like, shortly after the loss in Vietnam, that sort of thing.
I could see. Well, it's kind of funny because I remember in the 70s, shortly after the loss of Vietnam, when there was a definite, I would say, rise in fascist attitudes, especially during civil rights. You see sort of the same disenfranchisement and red pilling that you did really after we came back from Afghanistan, and there's a lot of men who are having a hard time finding their place in the world. And sadly, this is the exact same recipe that happened when Nazi Germany came to power too. It just seems that the humiliating loss of a war brings a lot of affected men home. And as times become more and more progressive, women honestly don't find a need to lower their standards, and the red pilling is the guaranteed pipeline to fascism.
You know what? I want to say I slightly disagree, because America is a surprisingly stable country despite its many issues. Like, how do I describe it? Like, we survived the 70s.
What a crazy
and
decade. I mean, think about the 70s, period, all around the world.
No, yeah, like even just focus on America. What did we have? We had crime shooting up through the wazoo. We had literal thousands of domestic terror bombings. We had in fact, there were so many, people who tried to hijack flights from Miami to get them to Cuba that America, at one point, we thought about okay, maybe we should build a fake Cuban airport to trick these guys.
We had presidential assassinations. We had the mafia.
No, that was 60s.
Well,
yeah, Kennedy was 62. But
I was thinking Gerald Ford.
Oh well, okay, attempted assassinations, I guess. I'm sorry, I thought you meant successful. But yeah,
oh no,
we had
no,
Watergate.
no. And then,
stagflation.
Stagflation. I grew up near Cleveland, so you'd always hear about it being Bomb City, between the Danny Green and the Irish Mafia and the Italian Mafia. The 70s was crazy. That's one of the reasons I really like some of the Rob Zombie flicks, because the settings that he chooses are in the 70s, and it's just primitive enough to allow some really crazy stuff to happen.
Yeah, and I'm saying, if we as a nation could survive the 70s without descending into fascism, I think we can survive this. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we'll emerge in a good state, but it means we'll survive.
Well, the only problem that I would say now that we have, that we didn't have in the 70s, is the ability to mass communicate and keep people in an echo chamber, more so than they could just by, going to the local insert association meeting here. Instead, they can sit in their home and talk to people across the world who have the same kind of horrible ideas that they have. So,
that's literally what we're doing right now.
Because unfortunately, the only weapon that we have against hyperbole is truth and facts.
Ideally, assuming we can get people to listen to them.
Well, all we can do is try.
That's true. I don't remember.
15 times is a charm. We finally have a Speaker of the House, and the first thing he does is say that they're going to use power in order to, further their agenda of sham investigations. But however, Hakeem Jeffries before that gave the speech, went through the alphabet and nailed it. That was a thing of beauty, man. And there was almost a slap fight between the Republicans.
One thing that actually surprised me is that Marjorie Taylor Greene was so keen to vote McCarthy. I would have thought for sure she would have been in the like holdouts.
I think that when it comes to Green, when it comes to Gates, when it comes to McCarthy, I think that Trump has compromise on all of them, so they all have to fall in line. That's my
I
opinion.
guess.
That can be the only explanation because Boebert and Gates went against McCarthy, and I'm pretty sure that maybe the compromat that he has on them isn't nearly as bad. I don't know, but I know that there's dirt on everyone because Roger Stone's been doing it since the 70s.
I mean, I don't. I mean, the thing about Marjorie is that she's quite literally cheated on her husband, and I think like multiple times, and is now going through a hilariously publicly messy divorce. So I'm thinking like she clearly doesn't seem to care much about that about it. Like she's clearly someone doesn't who just doesn't have much shame.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of. Did you ever watch American Horror Story, the 1984 season?
No.
There's a lady in there who is craving for power and money, and just has no problem just taking morals and decency and dashing against the wall. And it just there's people like that, and they're susceptible to influence. Sort of like the Hunchback dude in 300. Give them the proper influence, and they'll flip on their morals and do the dirty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've never seen 300, but I think I know what you're referencing.
I hope I didn't give any spoilers.
I don't really know if you can spoil a movie that old at this point.
Well, I mean, you never know. So I know that there's one side that's always calling the other side groomers and such like that. But how about Matt Schlapp pummeling Herschel Walker's staff's business without consent? In his words, pummeled.
um, Honestly, it's really just about power to a lot of these folks. I recently found this like this left-leaning Christian guy on YouTube who's pretty small, but I remember he said something that stuck out to me, and I'm going to be paraphrasing, I'm probably going to get some words wrong, but he said something like, with these right-wing evangelicals, when they hear "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth," what they hear is "Be meek to me, and I shall give you the earth."
Hmm. Republican Jesus.
Yep.
He'd be considered a socialist these days, with all of his "be nice to everybody" and "accept strangers into your land" talk.
For you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Well, man, I think that this has been a great talk, and if there's any plugs that you'd like to do right about now, would be the time.
Just on Fax Fiveum. I got my name actually from, like it back in the 50s, there was this really rich oil guy in Texas who funded a very kind of strange anti-communist thing called Fax Forum. So I figured I'll just add one to it for the heck of it. So yeah, Fax Fiveum on YouTube, or at FFIVEUM on Twitter, with the two F's being capital. I don't use Twitter as much as I used to, but it is kind of funny to watch Musk driving into the ground. Let me think for a moment. Oh yeah, and one thing I wanted to add, they use the word groomer, but like I try to look at these things from a gay perspective, and it's like a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the gay folks think that they're doing what straight people have been doing since forever. Like heck, I remember I read that book. What was it? I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings in high school, and in that book, it's literally an autobiography. Maya Angelou gets raped, and I'm thinking like, that's not like it's literally like there's explicit rape in that book, and it's like nobody said that was grooming kids.
I think that the word groomer is used now because they can't use the more incendiary slurs that we grew up hearing.
Well, Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, one thing about the way that I guess just human psychology works is that if we think kids are in danger, it can trigger a type of like fight or flight response that you don't think much about.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's basically why the whole think of the children thing is so effective. It's just one of those things that is just kind of ingrained in a lot of our minds, and that is one big. I find that is one big part of a lot of conservative rhetoric is you don't have to think about it, you just kind of get it. Like heck, even when Barry Goldwater was running for president in the '60s, I think his slogan was "In your heart, you know he's right."
Every time I hear Barry Goldwater, I always think that was the pamphlet that Roger Stone picked up that started this whole fucking thing.
Amusingly, Goldwater actually mellowed out as he grew up, or as he grew older.
Yeah. I mean, how many quotes are attributed to him by saying, if the evangelicals take over? Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, thank you for having me on your show. I'm Fiveum, F5um on Twitter, with the two F's being capital, and Fiveum on YouTube. If any of you guys listening have anything you want me to read aloud, let me know, and I'll see if I can work it out. Have a great weekend.
And you too. Thanks so much for coming on, and we definitely look forward to having you back on.
I look forward to that too. Bye-bye.
All right. That'll be all for today. Remember, peace, love throughout the world, and don't forget to rock and roll.